Welcome to Common Mansplaining, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Eddie. That's Christian. Christian, welcome back. How's it going?
Great. The joys and the pains of Christmas season. We all know them.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Merry Christmas to all. We have the holidays coming up, so I want to wish everybody Merry Christmas before I forget. Unfortunately, we bring sad tidings this Christmas season as we have several tragedies that have struck both our nation and abroad over the last week. Most of you are familiar with them. There was a recent terrorist attack in Bondi Beach in Australia, and then we had Rob Reiner, one of my favorite directors, passed away. I wasn't crazy about him as a politician, but as a director, he actually directed my favorite movie of all time, which is The Princess Bride. He passed away, unfortunately, due to another murder, and then there was a shooting at Brown University. So, kind of a rough week for us. A lot of
Yeah,
death, a lot of
not much farther before, right? There were two National Guardsmen shot in D.C. as well.
yes,
So
yes.
sort of on the recent future, a lot of gun violence. Well, the Rob Reiner's not violence. But
Yes. And so of course, yeah, there's a lot of emotion that's been brought up in wake of this, and a lot of there's some philosophical musing that has occurred. As always, the left and the right have their own unique and patented spin that they put on any tragedy that basically has ever befallen. And the right almost always goes immediately to mental health, right? Do we need to fix mental health issues in America? And the left almost immediately always goes to gun control, right? Do we need to look at reducing the amount of guns in America and or restricting the laws, tightening the laws that allow gun ownership? One of these is protected by the United States Constitution. The other is not. So we're gonna talk about these tragedies, and we're gonna talk about what it means for the common man and how this comes out. Now, uh, let's start with Bondi Beach because it's not American. All right. This is yet another example of an Islamic attack, and I'm getting pretty tired of it at this point. Like I feel like every one of the terrorist regimes at this point follow like one of maybe like three different variations, and it's like Islamist terrorism, trans terrorism, and Antifa terrorism. Like basically, they're the only three I see right now. I mean, are there others?
no. There's three brands. There's Shia terrorism. There's Shiite terrorism. Right. There's
Right.
Palestinian terrorism, anti-Zionist terrorism. Like anyway, there's all kinds of flavors of uh,
But
Muslim terrorism.
they're all in the same broad category of Islamic terrorism and or anti-Semitic terrorism and or right. It's like you could almost like three main categories, and then the rest. If you were to listen to left-wing news media stations, they will tell you that like 85% of the crime comes from like white supremacists, not just white people, but white supremacists. This is not reflected accurately by statistics. We could go into some of the statistics, but I don't want to bore you. Like white people in general only perform about 59% of the violent crime in America. And I mean, I don't know how many supremacists there are in America at this point, probably like 4 or something like that. But
Well, yeah. Well, no, critical race theory says everybody's a white supremacist, whether you acknowledge it or not. Right. Yeah.
What was I thinking?
Anyway, yeah. They broaden it. I mean, here's part of the thing. Yes, it feels almost preventable. Like, right, that there are risks when you have military-age Muslim males in your population, especially if they're first generation, right? And so have to be policed, have to be watched, and it's uncomfortable. It's an inconvenient truth, right? It makes the left uncomfortable, but it's a real thing, right? It's and violence from African Americans in America is an uncomfortable but real thing. I mean, even Jesse Jackson acknowledged it when he's walking down in a urban street late at night and he hears someone behind him and he turns around and he sees the people in white, he would be relieved. Like, he'd relax kind of thing. And it was like even he recognized this. So it was, sort of a state. It was a truth, and it made him uncomfortable, and he wanted to confront it and change it. And you only change these things by confronting them, right?
Right.
What we found, right? And if you get cowed away by being called a racist, that you don't confront it, it only emboldens them. It only makes things worse. You have to confront it and affect real change and hopefully cultural change, and see that their community, right, will police this as well. When they see that, oh, okay, now my family members can't come over and join me here in the US because Islamic immigration's been shut down. Maybe they'll
Right.
police their own members to stop this extremism because they'll see the negative consequences rain down on them, right?
Right. And of course, I mean, that isn't to say that any race has a monopoly on terrorism. It's
No.
not like any race has a monopoly on violence. Now, one thing that I would point out about this Bondi Beach tragedy, and before I even go into it, our heart and prayers go out to the victims. Our heart and prayers go out to the families of the victims and anyone touched by these tragedies. As always, understand that you have, my prayers and my thoughts. Australia is one of those that has outrageously tight gun control laws already,
Yeah,
right?
there's no right to own a gun in
Right,
Australia. It is a privilege granted to you by the government, not a
right,
God-given privilege.
and not for many of the reasons that we would consider commonplace here in America, like self-defense, right? Like you could say, "Hey, I need a gun for self-defense. I'm in a really bad part of town," and they would look right through you. You're not allowed to actually own a gun for self-defense in Australia. You can have one for hunting if you get a hunting license. You can have one for like, getting rid of like rodents or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, pests. But you can't have one just to defend yourself, which is something that in America we take for granted, and
Against you can, yeah, to defend yourself against other men. Right?
yeah,
You're
I
like,
guess that's right,
this is to
right.
keep dingoes from eating my baby. They're like, here's your gun. Right?
Dingo,
You're like, yeah.
dingo. Yeah, so yeah, right. So I mean, and what amazes me is despite their outrageously tight control on guns already, this situation, it didn't prevent this situation from occurring. And then immediately after this situation occurs, they immediately go directly to, oh, we need to tighten gun control even more. Right. That's their first thought, right? Like that's the solve all, the catch all for any kind of violence whatsoever is to just tighten gun. And I would say that this proves that's insufficient. It doesn't guarantee you a violence-free nation just to have super ultra tight control on guns. It doesn't. And we're going to talk about that, a little bit
Well,
further.
one of the changes they say is that immigrants will not be allowed to own guns at all.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah,
That's one of their things too. That that this is a citizens only right. I mean, so they're sort of maybe confronting that immigrant crime, especially Muslim immigrant crime, is an issue.
now
But
you know what? Hold on, real quick.
sure,
If imagine if Trump said that. Imagine if Trump was like, only citizens should own guns. Like imagine if he was like, from now
it's
on,
gun control. Yeah,
yeah, he would be, oh, xenophobic, racist, blah, 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 blah. Nobody's saying any of that about Australia. I just want to
yeah.
point that out, right? Nobody's saying a single thing about like the fact that they're saying, citizens should be the only people to care. All of a sudden, it's just fine. If Trump said the exact same words, I swear they would light him up with, oh, you're just racist. You just don't like Muslims. You just don't like blah, 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 blah. Why
Well,
can't we?
they just like Trump can come out and say everything he wants to do, everything in the Australian gun thing, and they would still say that it's not enough or that he's just pandering or whatever. Right, right. There's no sort of pleasing people when it comes to Trump. That's not the goal. Here's one of the things I want to get to. Now, after a tragedy, yes, it's an or death. Obviously, there's a period of mourning, and that's a very emotional time. We need to let that play out. And there's a
Yeah.
period of introspection, right?
Yes.
And we need to let that play out and think about it, right? And examine, look inwardly. Do things need to change? Was this something that was preventable? We could have done something. But when you're in that emotional mourning period, mourning state is an exceptionally bad time to make legal policy,
Yes.
right? And find people, right? We have discussions. Come on this show because you're feeling emotional. Talk to us. Have things, but to lay down laws, fundamentally start restructuring society and people's rights when you're feeling emotional, right? It's bad practice for Western democracies, and more something that you'd see along the lines, some overreaction and backlashes that you'd see in banana republics, not sober, nation of laws kind of governance.
Absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. So now, Rob Reiner was the second of the two tragedies this week, and you had to fill me in a little bit more on this because I had heard, obviously I heard that he passed away, and Rob Reiner is, as many of you know, was a phenomenal director in his days, right? He directed movies like When Harry Met Sally, Princess Bride. Princess Bride remains my favorite movie of all time, and I'll
A
keep
Few
saying
Good Men, A Few
A Few
Good
Good
Men,
Men, phenomenal.
Spinal Tap, yeah.
Yeah, great movies, great direction, great casting. Like just a phenomenal director. His talent was unrivaled. Now, his politics, he's like, to me, he's a lot like a Robert De Niro. Like he really needs to stay in his lane. Like some don't, and I'm not saying like all actors, because there are actors who are able to like bridge that divide. They have kind of like the mental fortitude, the mental acumen to do that. Those
Gravitas,
two,
yeah.
yeah, those two in particular just kind of they only know the left-wing talking points and the Trump derangement syndrome part of it. They don't know enough to actually like speak at length, at breadth about these topics, to understand the philosophies, the ideologies behind them. They're just like spitting out words, and it's like, and again, and I'm gonna say it right here and now. That doesn't mean that somebody deserves to die, ever.
Yeah.
Right? Just because he was a nincompoop politically does not
Yeah.
mean that he ever deserved this. And right. And so
Yeah.
one of the things we're going to talk about as we get into this is Trump's rhetoric surrounding this has, of course, been attacked. Big surprise, right? Trump saying something unreasonable. Wow, that never happens, right? Like, but we're going to talk about, is that truly equatable to, because what's being equivocated to is Charlie Kirk's murder and the aftermath of that, where everybody was basically cheering for Charlie Kirk's death. I want to point out that as Trump made these rhetorical remarks, they were distasteful, but nowhere in those remarks did Trump say anything to the effect of, I'm glad he's dead, or he deserved it. Neither of those things came up. The things that Trump said was, I never liked him. And he had Trump derangements. I will freely admit that Trump seems to have blamed Trump derangement syndrome for his death, which was a weird. I mean, I don't know if he was trying to do that or if that's just how it came across. Obviously, that wasn't the reason that he was killed, but
Yeah.
Nowhere in Trump's horrible rhetoric did he say either that the guy deserved to die or that he was cheering his death or that, none of that came up. And so for those of you who want to equate what happened after Charlie Kirk's death, which by the way was a political death, and this wasn't, right?
Yeah.
Like Charlie Kirk is a political figure. This guy really isn't. And I mean, and he was killed for non-political reasons. But even if they were both killed for political reasons, like people were coming out cheering that Charlie Kirk was dead. They were happy that he had experienced violence, right? Nobody's saying that about Rob Reiner. Even the people who hated him.
They were like essentially supporting the assailant, the gunman, the assassin who killed Charlie Kirk. Nobody's saying like, good job, Nick Reiner.
Right. So I mean, I don't know. I'm not really sure where the equivalency comes from. I'm not sure what exactly. It goes this far, right? Like say both are distasteful comments, right? Like on the one side, it goes a lot further than what Trump says.
I want to make a quick note here about growing up in Los Angeles, about Hollywood liberals. So part of it is Hollywood used to be very conservative politically. Was reliably Republican in their politics, right? You think through World War II they produced a lot of pro America films, propaganda films, and it was very, very conservative. And there was Reagan was a big part of like kicking out communists that were in Hollywood, that were trying to infiltrate Hollywood propaganda. through the 50s, and then there was essentially a backlash through the 60s and stuff, and then they finally did away with the censorships, and Hollywood became more fair, like to both sides, and then the smugness, everybody who they felt like they were so brave for being, a leftist, right? And like harken back to those times where the McCarthy age, where they would clamp down on any type of Russian, Soviet communism sympathies, right? And then they just have this sort of little bubble where they're so wealthy, they're so insulated, everybody's telling them wonderful all the time, and when you feel you're invincible, your policies, they've done psychological studies, your policies or your views politically become very liberal, right?
Yeah.
Right. I think I've talked about this. They have the thing where imagine you're Superman and nothing can do anything to you, and then they ask you a bunch of political questions or policy questions. You're super liberal, but if you're like, oh, you're just a normal person, or you're very susceptible to being injured and dying, right? You become a lot more conservative in your policies, and so that's why everybody's sort of like, these people are out of touch. It's a different world living in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, his father was a well-known entertainer, comedian, actor for years. He grew up unbelievably well-connected in Hollywood. Was in All in the Family for 10 years, and then immediately his first director stuff was a hit, and started getting, anything he wanted to do, he'd have the budget to do it, and was loved, and was going to parties with A-listers and people well connected, where the sort of incident that triggered this family fight happened. So I think America generally, like when Hollywood people endorse the president, it's like, oh, I know that person, I like their films, but the common man sort of discounts it and knows that Hollywood people are really kind of out of touch if they live in Los Angeles and are part of that world. We don't really take them serious, right? The few people that we take serious are people like Harrison Ford, who lived in Montana and would fly a rescue helicopter to pick up stranded hikers, or still had some connected to the common man, right?
Right.
So I think, yeah. So Trump sees, because Trump's in the Hollywood world, saw Rob Reiner as an elite, which I don't think is incorrect, and as a political opponent, especially in fundraising, who said a lot of mean things about him. And we know Trump doesn't hold punches against elites. Now, right, if this was just two random people that had been knifed by their son, Trump isn't coming out saying insensitive stuff. But he doesn't. When it comes to an elite that he's opposed politically in the past, he has no problems, right? His sort of decency, whatever, triggering his brain, which he has, but it doesn't kick in when it's an elite.
I'm not sure he has it, but maybe he does. I mean, it certainly doesn't. It's certainly not evident in these types of situations. You're right, like against elites. Now, one of the other things that's interesting to note about this particular case, well, a couple things. Number one, this was obviously not a shooting, right? This was a stabbing, right? And yet, even so, I go on Facebook and I hear people using this as an anthem for gun control, and I'm like, did they just not research what happened? Did they not look, or is it just the natural knee-jerk reaction of the left to say, "Oh, violence equals we need more gun control"? Right? It's like got nothing to do with it.
They think the government can stop violence, right?
Yeah.
The government can't. In fact, there have been Supreme Court cases that policemen are not responsible for your individual security.
Right.
Right. They're not your bodyguards. Right. You have to defend yourself. You have to think for yourself. They're keepers of the peace, and they can investigate crimes after the fact, but they're not. Their job is not to protect your life as an individual.
Right. They're deterrents, right? They're there as possibly, and then after the fact, right? They can be post-event deterrents for future events, right? So, but yeah, they can't just follow each and every person around and like put everybody inside a force field, that and even if they could, I'm not so sure I'd want them to, because here's the thing, right? Again, the government's role is to to create a situation in which I can thrive, not to make me do it, right? And I want to be in control of my own destiny. I don't want somebody else, managing I want to control the safety of my family. I don't want somebody else to manage that, right? I want that to be me. I might want that to be my position. But okay. So the other interesting thing about this that affects the common man is that it's rumored that what's the guy's name? Nick Reiner, I guess, or whatever,
Nick Ryan.
is possibly seeking the temporary insanity plea. And I just wanted to spend a brief moment on this.
Well,
Now, he hasn't done it yet. He hasn't done it yet. But there have been questions about his mental. Obviously, he's got mental health issues, right? He's a known druggie, and he's got known mental health issues. And of course, there was a recent where he didn't. He could have been moved for pretrial confinement, but wasn't because he was deemed not ready, not mentally ready for that, which sometimes is a preamble for this. Now, I don't want to speak out of turn because he has not actually filed any pleas of that nature yet, but I did want to take a moment.
Well, the picture I saw was in the type of jail clothing that they give somebody so that they can't use to hang themselves or something. It's not the standard issue. It looks like it's not got no sleeves, right? It's kind of stuff. So, yeah, obviously they're treating him different. Now, first off, he's entitled to the best defense. He's got money. Supposedly, he has a very good lawyer. If his lawyer sees that the best strategy is to pursue this, that's for the lawyer, and then for the judge and the jury to whether they buy it or not. Right? I think right now, he had some issues. He was somebody who maybe lacked executive function, had to come back and keep living with his parents, struggled to succeed in the very Los Angeles, especially the well-connected world. You need to be chill. You need to have a lot of social intelligence. And if he lacked that, that he was struggling to be able to take care of himself, and amplify that with methamphetamines, which is supposedly the drug he was on, which makes people extra paranoid, right? And then he starts being paranoid, has a bad experience, bad trips, and this obviously led to erratic, extreme behavior, which is what we call it. Yeah.
Right. So, I did want to spend one moment, very, very briefly, because this isn't the main focus of the thing, but temporary insanity. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'm having a tough time understanding when a criminal is not temporarily insane, right? Like,
well,
aren't they insane?
Right. So crimes of passion. That's what we call, second-degree murders, or the types of murders that we sometimes don't punish with the death penalty or life in prison because we don't think that person as a pattern is going to murder again. Say they came home, got beaten up by somebody, or found their wife was cheating with another man and started fighting that man, started losing the fight, and then reacted extremely and pulled out a weapon and killed him or something like that. Or whatever. Like there's sort of a heat of the moment. They feel like they're threatened, maybe not they are, or they're angry. They don't get a chance. That's why they call it a cooling off period for buying weapons. Because there is this sort of legal term, and it's even in the Bible, right? Moses talks about it too, that when your blood is up or hot, and then versus when they're sort of lying in wait, the cold-blooded murder of people, like, you didn't know this person wasn't anything, and you're still killing them, that we treat like, hey, you are a danger to society, that you can just, value human life so that you're not even angry or upset and you're killing somebody. So we do sort of already take into account their mental health, and that they're maybe mentally not thinking right when they committed those crimes, but that doesn't get them off. It's not an innocent. Temporary insanity is not like I should suffer no consequences. It would be almost like this should be manslaughter because of my drug-induced temporary insanity, which I wouldn't buy at this point. I don't know what evidence and arguments he's going to make, but I feel like that's a little bit wishy-washy. But right, because if you're insane, then you still go to jail, but you just do it in an insane asylum instead of a regular jail.
Well,
prison.
sort of, right. But that's different, right? It's different to not actually go to jail, to go to instead to an asylum. They're just saying you're sick instead of guilty.
But you still can't be. You're still a danger. You're antisocial. You can't be trusted to be in society by yourself, right? So you're still.
But that's not
it's still
jail.
removing them from society.
Right.
They're trying to. And One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is kind of a thing of somebody, Jack Nicholson character who clearly doesn't belong in the asylum, but he knew it was better than the prison because, sort of feigns his mental illness because,
Great movie.
yeah. I'm sure it happens, but I think right now we've kind of had an overcorrection, right? We don't have asylums. We're sort of overcorrected in not taking mental illness very seriously right now, so I don't think it'll work.
Yeah, I
Our
don't think so
general
either. It's not very
2025, we're pretty much like, hey, unless you're basically to Tim Waltz and unable to speak sentences, uh, we're gonna
good.
think you were capable enough of stopping yourself from murdering your mother and your father, right? So a double murder too. I mean, it's one thing to kill one person, but two people while they're sleeping, right? They're gonna say like, look, yeah, this is cold blooded. This was calculated. This was, you know, you can't be around. So he should never breathe free air, whether or not he has psychiatrists that he talks to on a weekly basis or not.
Yeah. So to
That's my
answer James,
opinion. Right.
James asks, do you get sentenced to a mental institution for a set amount of time, or is this until a doctor says you're sane again? It depends on the case, but a lot of times it's something to the effect of you're there until they're confident you can stand trial and can realize what was right and wrong in retrospect or something like that, and then you might get transferred back to a jail. But or sometimes you just stay there forever, or obviously depends on the severity of your mental health issue.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah.
Or your Tim Waltz, IQ level. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Or you just become governor, right? And that's the other
Yeah.
option.
They could make you the governor of Minnesota. That would be a fitting punishment.
That's rough. But yeah, I mean, when I first started with the defense of, not guilty by way of temporary insanity, it blew me away. I was like, well, of course they're temporarily insane. That's why they committed a crime, right? Like that's right, of course, right? I don't know that there's a criminal out there that doesn't have at least some kind of
I was temporarily insane when I decided to run out and not pay my bill at the steak restaurant I just ate at. So no consequences, right? No
yeah,
consequences.
temporarily insane when I decided to, I mean, yeah, you could use it for literally anything, and right. And moreover,
I was just temporarily insane back there, officer. I'm cool now.
it's all better, all better. But anyway, yeah. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on that. All right. So the Brown shooting is the one that probably most directly bears on the gun control argument, as it is in America. It is a shooting, right? And then, as far as I know, we don't even have the actual person in custody yet. We're still pursuing. We had one person of interest, and we decided that wasn't the right person. We had another person of interest, decided that wasn't the right person, and now we're on person of interest number 3. And the first thing that strikes me about this incident is that the first two we were really quick to release details on, right? Like the first two people of interest, we had their picture all over the place. We were like, "This is who it is. Please find this person. Help us with information." And now the third one, all of a sudden, they're not giving us any details on.
Well, the first one was like an ex-military person or somebody, right?
Yeah.
And then they found out, oh no, this was not the assailant. So, yeah, you're always a little bit when the certain identities of the shooter are inconvenient. We'll
Right.
see either his religion, his sexual identity preferences, his politics, his online persona and posts. Then it's like, hey, that doesn't really matter. We'll wait and discuss that when there's something big
Right. Yeah.
happens and nobody's paying
Nothing to see.
attention to that. Yeah, nothing to see here. But I mean, yeah, a university is a place of peace, right? It's not a military target. It's one thing if you hate the government and you're going to shoot at a military installation. Those guys are armed. Those guys sign up to be shot at, right?
Yes.
You take and it's a fair fight. They can fight back at you or whatever. I'm not saying do that, but I'm saying if you're angry at America's institution, then those are the things that represent American hegemony.
Right.
But a university where kids are just walking around studying, right, and you're just randomly trying to kill people there that stand, you don't know if they would agree with you or disagree with you or what on any type of political, like you just want someone to die because reasons like
Yeah.
and that people, right? Those people that are so determined to kill that way, not having easy access to a handgun, rifle, or something like that, isn't going to deter them, right?
Right.
As we say, the Bondi Beach guy was found when he was apprehended by a hero and stopped, found to have many pipe bombs, IEDs in his car.
Right.
And nobody thinks that the laws against pipe bombs need to be strengthened. They're
Right.
plenty strong, right? There's no way that you're legally allowed to have a pipe bomb, right? So if somebody wants to do illegal criminal, by the definition, is breaking the law, is going to break gun laws and make pipe bombs, make dangerous things, and kill people. If they want to kill random people, right, which is an antisocial thing, they want us to be scared to go out and live our life in public. They're gonna, if you take away easy guns, you just make it difficult for other people to defend themselves, and make them lead to more extreme.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. I mean, yeah. And so I guess this is raised some questions about, how safe is it on these supposedly high priced universities, right? Like, should they have better security? I don't know. I mean, you can go overboard with that kind of stuff, but I am surprised to see, like, it seemed like that guy couldn't even answer the most fundamental questions about their camera system. They're like asking him, so do you have
Okay,
cameras about
yeah,
this? He's like,
you
yeah,
need
yeah,
some, yeah, you need some basic security competence, but for the main thing, like why they would feel, because they shouldn't feel a target. Sort of like I feel like nobody's gonna come rob my house because I have nothing in my house that has street value.
right,
Right? Somebody comes in and takes in this stuff, and they're going to try to sell it on the street. What? Right? I have nothing of street value in my home,
they
and
might
that's
get like
sort of how
$50 for my
universities feel.
laptop.
They're like, why would anybody target us with violence?
Right,
Right? You can't really say like we're teaching kids, we're giving classes, and you might not like the classes or whatever, but you know why, so your security is to some degree, like if I had anything of value, maybe I would employ a more intense security system. Right now my
yeah,
pit bull is sufficient, I think, deterrent.
right,
But
right, right. Well,
but
and
for the
God,
main thing, I just don't feel like I'm a target. If anyone cased my house, they'd be like, all right, next, let's
yeah, right.
moving on.
Right, right. Well, and unfortunately, like, gone are the days where, I mean, it's gonna sound bad, but like, I long for the days where people would like actually kill so that they could steal something. Like, those are gone. Those days are gone. People don't really do that anymore. I mean, yeah, yeah, they do it, but like, it's just very rare now. Rare now, people just kill for no reason. Like,
Yeah.
literally no reason. Or they're killing for like a political statement, or they're killing because
Yeah,
they're angry,
well,
or they're
there's
killing
drug
because
trade. There's people, yeah. And this is part of the thing, like when people, maybe you've seen The Wire, if you've seen The Wire,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Like,
So it's like,
a little bit.
okay, there's violence like within the game, right? People that signed up. So it's one thing for two drug people who are in the drug trade, rival drug trades to kill each other. And the police kind of understand and investigate the murders. But then there's also like their reaction if somebody puts their gun up against a citizen, just a normal person who's living their life, who's not part of that world,
Right,
and they're right, and that will, that is out of pocket,
right.
and there's one character in there who he makes his own living by robbing drug dealers, right? He
Okay.
preys upon them, right? Robs drug dealers, and he'll testify in courts. He's a CI for some of the homicide detectives. And he even says it in court once, like, how do you make a living? And he's like, oh, I rob drug dealers. And
Right.
the defense going, well, how do you live doing that? He's like, well, one day at a time, I guess. It's
Very
very
well,
dangerous.
actually.
It's dangerous, but right. But he's like, I never put my gun up to a citizen, right? These people signed up for this. They knew it was illegal. They're armed. They're defending themselves. I'm taking these risks. Type of thing like that. You got to have something, right, to prey upon them or whatever. But when violence reaches out to citizens, that it sort of gets a different level of media attention. That's why people are like, well, why weren't all these shootings in Chicago talked about? Because initially they just looked like they're sort of people within the game who kind of signed up for these risks, and not like somebody who was when somebody's out of the game, like the Reiners, like people at Brand University just walking between classes, going to take a test or something, gets killed. That's national news, right? Because these people did not willingly put themselves in a lifestyle that would where those risks were known.
Right. And so, of course, now some of the officials from Brown have come out, and even some of the local authorities have come out and said that what's really to blame behind this violent situation is guns. Right. That's what's really behind. It's not even so much the fact that somebody has, gone out of their way to go kill people. Right. It's just the fact that guns are, in the area, in existence in America, and can be acquired. Right. So that's the real problem. Now, obviously, the common man is skeptical about that. We have an amendment. The Second Amendment of the United States Constitution is here for a reason. It's to protect our rights, right? Now, very briefly, there's two types of rights, right? There's a type of right that we believe that we have inherently, and that's like an unalienable right, like the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of property, right? Mm-hmm. The other right, the only other type of right, is only a right because we can make it so, because we have the force to protect it, right? For example, if you want to have the right to, to be able to bank at the banking establishment you have, or to, to have the right to, walk freely down the road, or the right to drive a car, or the right to do anything else. Basically, there's rights that you have that you think you have that are just innate, right? And these would be liberty rights, like the right to walk around. But like the right, some people would say, like, well, I have a right to an education. No.
You've got it flipped, Eddie.
Okay, so go ahead. Explain why you think
liberty is something granted to you, right? Think you're in the military, right? Everything's right. Then you're granted liberty. You're given liberty to go out and do these things.
Oh yeah, you're talking about
freedom. A right is something you have innately.
Yeah,
but liberty is something licensed, or something like that we agree we have a social contract, laws protect, or that the government grants you, right?
That's what I was saying. Yeah, I guess I was using both. I was using the word liberty in both ways, I guess. But yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So,
liberty,
the right to liberty.
Liberty is something.
The right to liberty, the right to be able to move freely and act freely is liberty in the unalienable way. But it can also be a right that is granted to you in a different mechanism. So yeah, you're right too. Yeah. But yeah. So what I'm saying is there are rights that we have innately. We believe we would have them even if we couldn't defend them. We would believe, like, for example, someone takes my life, even though I was unable to protect my life, I would still claim I had my right to life, right?
Yeah.
But there are also rights that we have here in America, for example, the example I gave was the right to education, right? Everyone believes that we have the right to education. Everyone believes we have the right to medical health, to medical care. We don't actually have those. The only reason we have them is because we can enforce it, and the government tells us we have them.
Well, all right. So we have a right in our speech. Our freedom of speech. We have a freedom to read and educate ourselves. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we have that. We have that right. Now, the right for the government to provide us education. Right.
Right.
That's a liberty granted to us.
Right.
Right.
And so the reason it's complicated.
What's the classic thing Bernie Sanders talks about? That when he talks about the right to own guns, we're like, okay, well, government should buy me guns, right? Yeah. When we talk about healthcare should be a right, and we're like, okay, well, guns are a right, so the government should buy me guns, and it's like, no, the government, your right is just to allow you to have guns. You've got to buy the guns yourself. Well, exactly like healthcare. If healthcare is a right,
sorry,
you're still going to buy it.
the reason it's so complicated, guys, and the reason that we're going back and forth on this is because there really only one of these is actually what we would call a right. Right. The other one isn't actually a right. It's what people think are rights, but are not. Right. But the reason that they would claim it is a right is because currently the government is giving you access to it. Currently, you have the force to defend it. And that's the only reason, like, for example, like women would say, we have the right to vote. Well, you currently do because we're enforcing it for you, right? Like the government is giving you this access. So technically at the moment you do, it's not an innate right. You don't have an innate right to vote. You just happen to have it at the moment because we are enforcing it, right? So that there's two different types of rights. And one right is what Christian and I would call a right. And the other one is what we're given or what we currently have access to based on our government's willingness or desire to provide force in relation to that, right? Now, guns are the only way that we will have the ability to defend any of these rights, whether they're a liberty granted or an actual right, with any seriousness, right? Without that, anyone who has that kind of weapon, that kind of tool, will be helpless against. So if they desire to take away our rights, we'll be worthless against those. And that's why
It's a
the Second
great
Amendment,
equalizer. Yeah.
right? And that's why the Second Amendment is so dreadfully important. And it was dreadfully important 300 years ago. It is dreadfully important today. It has not changed, right?
Well, right. I mean, in the wake of these shootings, they think, okay, here's somebody who's misusing their right to bear arms, right?
True.
That's what we would say that. But just misusing a right does not invalidate the right, right?
Agreed.
Just like the right to speech, just propaganda, lies, scams doesn't invalidate the right to free speech, right?
Right.
Right. In the same way, so we need to police and stop people incorrectly using, their weapons, right? Because they don't have a right to kill complete strangers in unprovoked attacks that aren't self-defense. But that doesn't invalidate the underlying right just because of misuse. And that's the type of thing when people are emotional, right?
Yes.
And why you have to come down from emotion so that you can realize, okay, when the fundamental right, and here's part of the thing, the difference in America, just to be intellectually honest about this, and Australia is, yes, we have the Second Amendment. So you might not like guns. You might really, really dislike them, like people at Brown University or a lot of people on the left dislike guns. It doesn't matter, right? We have the Second Amendment. The government can't do anything about it. Now, if you're a saloon owner and you want to make people check their guns at the door or something, that's your prerogative. But the government can't say that you have no right to own firearms or things like that. They can't infringe upon that. They're restricted from doing that. That's something you have. And I think that what we see is as soon as that's taken away with, the government will, oh man, you give them an inch, you take away that right, and where it's a privilege, and they will take things and they will react and paint it with a lot of propaganda, with a lot of emotion, why you should support us. But it is definitely, then you're at the mercy of the criminals who are going to break the law and have illegal guns and use them. Right.
So James asked a question. He said, so he's asking the thing where the guy said women don't have the true rights to vote. So where does the law and a right differentiate from each other? So let me try to clarify, because I think we kind of did a good job muddling that up. So a right is what you are entitled to innately, with or without government influence, right? With or without anybody else.
Yeah.
Right. Even if we didn't exist, even if I wasn't around to defend my rights, they would still exist, right? My right to life, liberty, and pursuit of property would still be my right. Now, when we talk about something like voting, and then I'm not talking just about women's right to vote. This is anybody's right to vote. Someone's right to vote. When people say they have a right to vote, they're not actually talking about a right. What they're talking about is a collective agreement, right? We've all decided that this is how we're going to run the government.
They've been given liberty to vote.
Wait. We've all decided that this is how we're going to live. We've all decided that this is our collective agreement. And inside that collective agreement, we've agreed that we're going to vote for candidates, right? So it's not a right. It's just something that we've all decided we're going to do. Now, it becomes something that people feel entitled to because they're used to that agreement. But just because it's part of that collective agreement doesn't make it a right. Now, even if we didn't agree that I am entitled to life, I would still be entitled to life. Because that has nothing to do with our agreement. It has to do with what the fact that God gave us life. That's it.
Yeah, it is. The right to vote is also codified, right? And there are laws about it, right?
Yes, but
Rights
law,
are things right. You can do this, right? Have to stop the government. Nobody can mess with this, but to define, you have to define what voting is and how that's done, and you have to follow laws to do it. That's definitely, the government is giving you a liberty. This is how we want to operate, right? All that Eddie says. But it's not something like, if there was no government around, we wouldn't vote because there'd be nobody to vote to.
right.
But our other rights to like self-defense and to speech and other things would still exist. Those are God-given rights.
Right. Yeah. And it's not universal either, right? So like you could be in a different type of government that just doesn't vote to put people in office. You just like instead you just like draw at random or something. I mean, there's definitely different types of government. There are people where governments where the person takes leadership, right? Where the commander or the conqueror just comes in and takes it, whether you want to or not. And that's, it's only a right if you would have it independent of anybody else's choice, anybody else's decision, right?
So
sorry,
essentially, here's what I would say. So the left is really what they're talking about. They might, well, they can't enact any more. Well, the government can't really enact any more meaningful gun control. The Constitution bars them from doing it, right? It's outside their power. So what the left really wants to do is remove that constitutional amendment.
Yep.
Right? They want to remove that right. And so I just want to go through a few of their arguments for that with you.
Sure.
And maybe that will help people come and see some of the common arguments for doing away with the Second Amendment. That's being intellectually honest, right? Because the government cannot take away your guns. They don't have the right to do that, but they can amend the Constitution and remove the Second Amendment and then do whatever they want. That's really what the far left wants to do.
Yep.
So let's talk about some of their arguments. One is the Second Amendment is obsolete given modern weapons.
Right. Yeah. Well, so yeah, you and I, this is the one place where you and I differ a little bit, right? So like it does bear mentioning that a suitcase nuclear device is probably an arm that is born, right? So you do have to define which things constitute arms and which things constitute explosives. Now,
weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, well, one thing my friend, who's a lawyer, who's actually teaches constitutional law and other things, he says that what you would do is you'd use the at the time the common understanding use of that word, and so at the time, what people would think of when they say arm is just a firearm, right? So they're not talking about like all forms of weaponry, so things like nuclear devices or Stinger missiles or stuff like that would be off the table. It would just be a firearm, right? So basically all types of firearms. And so as long as you're using that original text understanding, I think it's every bit as valid today. I think there are ways of interpreting it today that would make it obsolete, yes, but I think if you just use that original interpretation, it's still just as valid today.
All right. I mean, we talked about it. I thought my spicy take was if the government uses any military weapon against its citizenry,
right,
then that weapon now becomes legal for any of the citizens to own. Right?
It's interesting.
So you could have phalanx, machine guns that fire, 1,200 rounds per second, kind of thing like that. But if you only use them on military boats against military targets, then yeah, you can restrict me from owning that. But the minute you turn that weapon on citizens, right, then now that becomes right that we can have parity to the government if they're going to use that. And that's why I think generally police departments have handguns, shotguns, stun grenades, generally the police are going to have weapons that most common people can own. Right. Occasionally some of the vehicles are a little bit, you have some that have had some of these armored vehicles, occasional things like that. But the actual weapons police have are pretty comparable to what citizens can own.
And those armored vehicles aren't things that you can bear, right?
Yeah.
So my brother would say only something you can carry. Now, what as to the basis of the argument, right, that this is an old law. I mean, murder is an old law, right? Things don't become obsolete because they're old, and our need to defend our rights is very much still present today.
Yeah. They would say the constitutional rights are not absolute, that they're contextual and evolve with technology. And just as free speech doesn't protect incitement over mass media platforms, what would your response be to that argument?
Yeah. So right, and again, we would differentiate between things that are absolute rights and things that are government granted privileges or liberties, right? Like you would call them. I would claim that this actually is it's kind of both. It's in the middle. So it's an extension of a God-given right, which is a right to defend yourself. But the extension is how, right? The tools that you would use to do so. We've deemed that this is necessary because without this tool, you're just woefully inefficient at doing so against somebody who would seek to take away your rights with these tools, right? Like if anybody's got a gun, you're not going to be able to defend your rights against them unless you also have a gun, right? Unless you have an equalizer. So I would say that this is one of those things where it like bridges the gap. Now, as far as contextual is concerned, right? Like, yes, I agree that this is not an absolute right. The absolute right is the right to defend your rights. And then how you do it needs to stay relevant, right? And so contextually, I don't see another alternative. And I haven't been presented with one. Like, I've never had a liberal say, all right, like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take away all your guns, but, and then give me a different alternative that I'm satisfied with. I've never been like, oh, yeah, I'll definitely be able to defend my rights with that, right? Like,
well, maybe if they give you Superman's laser vision where you can just kill, yeah. Then they can take your guns away as long as they give you Superman. All right, another one. Here's one. Guns increase violence rather than prevent it. Empirical evidence suggests that greater gun availability correlates with higher rates of homicide, suicide, and accidental death.
Yeah, patently misleading. So there's two huge issues that come across here. Number one is they're ignoring the cost on the other side of the equation, right? And the reason that we have all liberties have costs, right? But there's a reason for the liberty in the first place, right? So one cost of not having the liberty is you don't have the liberty, right? So like if you don't have the freedom to defend your rights, that's got a lot of value right there. But even if you're just matching life against life, the real reason that we implemented the Second Amendment in the first place is because we had just got done dealing with a tyrannical government that had removed all of our rights. And we just got done fighting a revolutionary war that, guess what, cost us a lot of human life, right? Now, people forget about the amount of life that's involved in a war like that. And they forget that the Second Amendment is a deterrent. It's really easy to think about the loss of life that you face every year because you'd be like, oh, last year we lost like almost 50,000 lives to gun deaths. More than half of them were suicides. So it's not really the kind of gun deaths that they're talking about. It's not AR-15s or nothing like that. But they think about the life that they see every single year, ticked up every single month. Every time we see a school shooting, they feel it, right? But they forget that this deters a revolutionary war in the future. And if this offsets a revolutionary war by even 100 years, by even 50 years, by even 10 years, right? You're talking about millions of lives saved. Do you know how many people we are likely to lose in the next revolutionary war at current numbers, current statistics? 30 million people. 30 million people. What is 20,000 lives in comparison to that? We would have to not have a revolutionary war for like 12 centuries, 15 cent. It would have to go like eons into the future before you would overcompensate. Now, one analogy I want to give people real quick is this is a lot like driving a car every year, because there's repair costs to a car. And you see those repair costs every single year, every single month. You have to do tires, you have to do oil changes, you have to do, rotations. You have to do a lot of stuff like that.
New power steering pump. Yeah.
Can you imagine if you said, well, those yearly, daily, monthly costs are too much to bear. We're just going to stop paying those. Right? The problem is they forget that eventually they have to buy a new car if they don't keep it up. Right? And again, the nation is the same. It's easy to be like, oh, we're paying these yearly annual costs, but we forget that if we don't pay this, we're going to have to buy a new nation. Right? It's the same thing. So people forget about the costs on both sides of that equation.
All right, I'm steel manning these arguments for you. Here's one.
Yeah. No.
Countries with strict gun regulations consistently experience lower rates of gun violence without descending into tyranny or lawlessness. The U.S. is a global outlier in both gun ownership and gun death rates. Public policy should be guided by outcomes, not ideology. If fewer guns mean fewer deaths, then regulation is justified. What would you talk to about that?
Well, so once again, fewer guns don't equal fewer deaths, right? So, and I just pointed out why. But there's another aspect of that I didn't even mention in the last one, and that is they're only discussing the cost side of this equation. They're not even talking about the benefit side of this equation, right? So there's something called defensive gun uses, right, that are studied in statistics very frequently. And as per most recent statistics, defensive gun uses range from, at the strictest definition, 60,000 to, at the loosest definition, 2.5 million gun uses per year. So that means there's 2.5 million situations where someone used a gun in defense of something, whether they protected their, life, limb, or property, right? Like whether they might have kept themselves from getting robbed, or whether they defended somebody else on the subway, or, and that's not even counting the deterrent aspect of it. That's not even counting like people who chose not to go try to go into somebody's house and break in because that old codger might have a shotgun, right? Like there's that. It's not even counting like all of the deterrent.
I think they would define it by the strictest term, the smallest number, and say that harm outweighs those defensive use. They know that defensive use exists, but they wouldn't define it up to the 2.5 million cases. They define it down and say that harm cases that thing.
Even if they use the strictest number, right? So like even if they use only the number that is strictly reported to the FBI, we report I discharged a firearm in defense of X, right? It's still 4 times the gun deaths by like non-suicide per year. 4 times, right? So it's literally you're literally saving yourself 4 times as often as you are hurting somebody else by guns, right? So like they're completely ignoring the benefit of firearms. And that isn't even to mention all the other stuff that I brought in before. That's just gun defensive uses versus gun death, right? And by the way, the only other thing I was going to say is for gun suicides, like which is the vast majority of our gun death each year, there's like studies show that you don't stop those. If you take the guns away, they just use a knife or a whatever, they run into a vehicle or whatever. They kill themselves no matter what, unfortunately.
Here's the next argument. The tyranny prevention argument is unrealistic. The idea that an armed populace can resist a modern authoritarian government is largely symbolic. The U.S. military possesses drones, tanks, cyber warfare capabilities at overwhelming force. Civilian firearms would be ineffective against a modern state, right? So they're saying the stand against tyranny is really just symbolic, because how would you refute that?
Yeah, classic argument. This is the classic Joe Biden. Well, we've got F-22s, so ha. Right. So the answer. This is also misleading because in any normal resistance, you're going to have both people who are part of the authoritarian regime on the authoritarian side, and people who are part of that regime on the resistance side, right? So you're going to have members of the military who use those tanks, who use those F-22s in resistance of those tanks and F-22s, and the drones are going to be on both sides, and the surveillance is going to be on both sides. Now, one side is usually larger, right? And it's usually the authoritarian side is larger and the resistance side is smaller to start out, right? But after momentum builds, I mean, both sides very quickly fight over those resources. It's not like only one side will have access to all of the tyranny producing implements and the other side will like, oh, because they have all this stuff, we're just going to leave all that stuff alone. No, both sides are going to have access to the most powerful implements of war. Now, that isn't to say that they should have them in advance, right? Like normal citizenry should just have access to firearms. And that's the equalizer, right? Because if you've got just a bunch of people with guns and with tanks and with F-22s and stuff, and that's the authoritarian regime, against people who only try to get those things but don't start out with firearms, it's going to be much more difficult for them to start that resistance movement, right? They have to have those things to begin the resistance movement, to start striking targets, to start acquiring resources, to start equalizing force. If you don't have them to start out.
And part of the thing, right, too, it's when you think about, all right, if you own a gun or even two guns, but a tank pulls up outside your house and a whole squad descends on your house alone, yeah, your gun's not going to be defend yourself. But when they think about, all right, we're going to try to suppress this city, and they think like, oh, there's 100,000 people with firearms and hunting rifles, that every single little copse of trees could be full of snipers, right? It really influences, like, their costs, right? And how quickly they can move and things they can do. So it's one of the big deterrents too, that the Soviets or North Korea or any of our enemies talk about why they wouldn't invade the U.S. is because our populace, even if the military, they feel like they could overrun the military targets, the populace would, insurgency, they could never govern because the populace is so well armed.
Right. Yeah.
They couldn't go out in public without, huge squadrons and armed things because everybody has guns. And so it's led to our safety from other nations too. And one of the reasons why nobody's invading us, that sort of well-regulated militia is respected by our enemies.
Now, I will say this real quick. I will say there will come a time when only one side has the resources that are valuable enough to make any serious military headway. When that time comes, it will be AI. It'll be AI doing it because they will be the ones that will be able to monopolize and universalize any sort of electronic equipment. Anybody else trying to use it will just be quickly attacked by DDoS attacks or like any kind of like cyber warfare attack. And when it's launched from an AI system, it will be utterly unovercomable. And when that happens,
we'll talk about AI, but yeah. All right, last one because we're running out on time here.
Yeah.
The Second Amendment conflicts with modern public safety needs. And that mass shootings are something that public safety needs to address. So urbanization, population density, social complexity, radically change the cost benefit analysis of widespread gun ownership. In densely populated areas, the externalities of gun use are far higher than an 18th century agrarian society. Everybody used to live on farms, and everybody was the same race. You had Indians, you had African Americans, you had white English Protestants, kind of thing. Now you've got a lot more groups. There's a lot more this diversity, and it's not a strength. It's led to conflicts. There's conflicts with that diversity.
Wow. I'm pretty sure
with urbanization, this is what they're saying, right? Or they're saying now we live in densely populated areas and giving all these people guns and reasons for them to start, fighting and hating and fighting each other. We could have a lot better public safety. We just took all those guns away. It would make Philadelphia a lot safer. What would you say to that?
The truth is maybe that's I don't know if that's true or not. It would be very difficult to prove either way. But let's say that that was true hypothetically. Let's say that taking all the guns away makes it safer. You still haven't dealt with the cost of losing your liberty, right? You still haven't dealt with the cost of losing your ability to defend your rights. And I don't think that there's good data to show that it would actually make things safer. I think there's data to show that it might reduce annual gun deaths temporarily, right? Like that's not the same thing. And it would also reduce annual gun defense uses, every year. And I think all the part of the problem is we're not honest with ourselves about the numbers, right? For example, like the CDC did a defensive gun use study and then pulled it down because gun control advocates were like, you can't show them that. That'll make them think that they actually defend themselves with guns. So it's like we're not honest with ourselves about the statistics. So I don't know if it would
The
actually
credibility of the statistics is we're skeptical of those. Yes,
but even if it was true, I am willing to take the cost of gun control so that so the cost of gun rights so that I have the right to defend my rights, right? Like I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to see extra gun deaths every single year. Yeah, and I know that sounds heartless, but I'm willing to see that just so that I can have the right to defend my rights. Just like I'm willing to see people's feelings hurt just so that I can have the right to speak freely. Just so like I'm willing to face all of the costs of all of my rights just so that I have the right. I mean, all these rights come with cost. Just like I'm sure people don't like seeing car accidents. Would there be less car accidents if we took away all the cars? Yes, probably, but you're willing to face the cost that there are car accidents so that you can drive a car, right? Any liberty comes with costs.
yeah. There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. But part of the thing is, I'm grateful. My last thing as a con man that we have this right,
Me
and
too.
that despite the people that disagree and raise these arguments, their arguments are wind against the Constitution and the things put in place
Very
to
true.
change the Constitution. And America is very different. I don't think you can compare us to any other country. Um,
Definitely.
and that our gun ownership and our sort of violence are different culturally than Japan and Scandinavia or even Russia and Italy, England, places that we tie to culturally. Um, we've kind of made our own thing here, um, and it is the one right. It is the spicy right. It's the dangerous one, but it
Yep.
validates all the other ones.
Yeah.
It kind of says like that you're serious about giving rights rather than just sort of token. Oh, I'm just saying I'm giving you rights. The right to bear arms is the real one, like the risky one, where the government is really risking is giving you, you know, dangerous weaponry and
Yeah.
saying, we know this is dangerous. You still have a right for it. They're acknowledging the danger, and if a government can give its citizenry, that kind of trust or that type of thing, then it's a tyranny, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
rather than government of the people by the people.
Yeah, it's right. And in closing, I'll just say this: the one concession I will make is that we are a different nation than we were, 300 years ago. We are, and one of the key differences that we're facing, why this has become such a challenge, is mental health challenges in America, right? And I would like to see us address those. I would like to see us try to reduce the number of truly mentally ill people out on the streets. And one thing that I like, if there's any gun control measure that I would see increased at all, if from me personally, I would like to see there be ramifications for doctors who know that there's a mentally ill diagnosis that they should be levying and should be restricting somebody's gun use and refuse to do it. If doctors are failing to do that, that's on the doctor. I think that doctor should face negligence charges. That's just me, because I think there are cases where like someone gets a hold of a gun and they never should have. Right? They were just always mentally ill. The doctor's been saying they're mentally ill, and then they just don't report like they're supposed to. That's on the doctor. The doctor should have reported that this person mentally ill shouldn't have a gun, right? That's it. So that's all I got for you guys. Christian, you got any other closing thoughts?
No, I mean, I agree. I think mental illness, and I think we've swayed like a little too far. We went from homeless having no rights to so many homeless advocates and advocates for the homeless that now we're acknowledging that the homeless now are a source of crime, a source of danger, a source of irresponsible gun use and gun violence. That they might be involved in the gang and but interacting with citizens in dangerous ways. So that misuse is trying to taint to everyone the the fundamental right and the things that the value that can be had by this.
Yeah.
Let's be skeptical of that. These are tragedies; they shouldn't happen, and we should always condemn this. And as a culture, try to police irresponsible gun use.
Amen to that. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like as always, we do this every Thursday, every Sunday now. Over the next couple of weeks, we're probably going to take some time off for Christmas and New Year's, but we'll keep you posted. Watch the community for that. And thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next time on Common Mansplaining.
Stay common. Merry Christmas.